Shalom Israel. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to the elect. And this lesson is going to be entitled, or is going to go into this article you see on the screen from Al Jazeera, which the article goes into nuclear war risk highest since World War II, UN Arms Research Chief warns. Okay? And hey, this is a beautiful news for us, man, and bad news for the people, of these particular lands, especially over here in Babylon, America. Because here it is, they have you thinking shit is sweet. People going on vacation. People just got off of their 3-day, really their 3-day Memorial Day weekend. Summertime is coming up. Spring break is basically people going on, this is around the time of spring break, people going on cruises and all of that, man. But it says nuclear war risk highest since World War II. All right, now when you look up just real quick, just to get a little bit of information on World War II, it says World War II, also known as the Second World War, was a global war that lasted from 1939 to 1945, so 6 years. The vast majority of the world's countries, including all the great powers, eventually formed two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. A state of total war emerged, directly involving more than 100 million people from over 30 countries. The major participants threw their entire economic, industrial, and scientific capabilities behind the war effort. All right, and we know this place is $22 trillion in debt. So any more war, is gonna basically pull the plug on this place even faster, so to speak, man. Because now, what? These nations have to put more of their efforts, all right, and more of their money, all right, which, like you said, over here in America, money that they don't have, into war. Which basically means what? They're going to tax more of the people, all right, and it's just going to be even worse for the civilians, okay? How they call it, civilians, man. All right? So it says the major participants threw their entire economic, industrial, and war and scientific capabilities behind the war effort. And that's what they're doing, man. They're spending more time and more efforts on, increasing their technology and modernizing, like I'm gonna go into Slovakia, how these countries are modernizing their nuclear capabilities. Okay, major participants threw their entire economic, industrial, and scientific capabilities behind the war effort, blurring the distinction between civilian and military resources. All right, and that goes hand in hand with the scriptures, like it says in right here in Joel chapter 3, verse 8. It says, verse 9. It says, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, the other nations, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up." All right, so everything you got, all these other nations, basically call your army and get them ready for what's about to happen. Be your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So now all those who have otherwise, been focused on agriculture and, basically focused more on getting the economy, right, building up on the economy. Now they're focusing on the military spending, man. They're focusing on their military might. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Okay? And that's just like World War II. That's going to happen in World War III, man. All right? We're seeing all these things play out again. Like, as they say, history repeats itself. So it says, blurring the distinction between civilian and military resources. World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history, marked by 50 to 85 million fatalities, most of whom were civilians, all right, in the Soviet Union and China. So most of whom were affected out of all those that were killed were the people, all right, living in the lands to which they're the people that were living in the lands to which that were in war, that were at war. Okay? So basically meaning if China is at war, that means the Chinese people will suffer. Okay? So it says most of whom were civilians in the Soviet Union and China. It included massacres, the genocide of the Holocaust, strategic bombing, premeditated death from starvation and disease, and the only use of nuclear weapons in war. Which I found this interesting. Which all of these facts are interesting. Massacres. All right. Which Esau is gonna basically. I'm gonna read it again, Slocky. It included massacres, the genocide of the Holocaust, strategic bombings, premeditated death from starvation and disease, and the only use of nuclear weapons in war. Because in war anything goes, man. In war anything goes, man. And just like then, all right, what's going on now? You have the measles outbreaks. All right, you have these so-called school shootings. All right, you have you can't forget about the Ebola virus and all these things that are happening at this very same time. Why? All right, because this is the very same time where the highest shall begin to visit the world, and at the point to where he does come, all right, he's gonna come, all right. Well, Yahweh Shai is gonna come in the spirit of Yahweh, all right, at the point of war, all right, at the point when war is all out, when war is already happening. Okay, so it says in the only use of nuclear weapons in war. All right, which that's something I also wanted to point out, because when you read into the timeline, it says the mushroom cloud of the atomic bombing of the Japanese city of Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945. All right, so this bombing happened in 1945, which it says, according to their research, all right, the World War II lasted from 1939 to 1945, basically meaning, all right, that nuclear weapons will be the end all, end all be all, if you will. So when those things are shot off, it's no more talking. It's no more. Hey, that's it. Okay, that's it. All right, and these things are written of in the scriptures, man. Nuclear weapons are written in the scriptures. All right, World War III is written in the scriptures. Okay, like it says, let's just grab it. In Revelations. (9 and 12). One woe was past. Woe meaning death. All right, and out of all the wars, all right, the world wars yielded the most death. So one woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. All right, so one woe is past, meaning World War I, and behold, there cometh two woes after it. All right, so the last woe would have to be World War III. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates, because that's the valley of Jehoshaphat, written of in Joel the 3rd chapter, around the place of the river Euphrates. All right, and it makes sense because that's where all these countries are already drawing to receive oil from, man. Which oil is big business all around the world. And the four angels were loose, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month, and a year for the slated third part of men. And the number of the heart, all right. So these the four angels, all right, were loose, which were prepared, which means, World War III is already prepared by Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, right? We just have to, certain things just have to happen, all right, before World War III pops off. Because, like I said, once World War III pops off, to where these other nations are shooting nuclear missiles at each other, that's the end all be all. So prior to that, the prophecy of the RFID chip and everybody being chipped has to come to pass. Famines have to come to pass. Pestilences have to come to pass. And we see these things rapidly approaching. All right. So, aside from what we're reading in that article, which I'm going to get back to it in a bit, as far as nuclear war, all right, risk highest since World War II. All right, all these things have to happen prior to, the icing on, the cherry on top, So it says, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels, which are bound in a great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loose, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year for the slated third part of men. All right, because, hey, it's going to be a lot more deaths. Okay, it's going to be a whole lot more deaths, man. All right, like the scriptures say in 2nd Esdras, how those compared to be those, if you compare those that are saved compared to those that die, is like a drop that falleth out of a bucket, man. A drop of water that falleth out of a bucket. That's nothing, man. So it says, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. Which, when you write that out, that's 200 million. Okay? And I heard the number of them, and thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. Now, I know the Apostle Ramla went into this, and if you look up the launching of a nuclear missile, let's look up the launch of a nuclear missile. All right, and just look at the images, man. Now, when you read the description, all right, which our apostles and elders, they tell us to look into these things, man. Do your own research. All right, so it says, and thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them having breastplates of fire and of jacinth. All right, now this is when it says breastplates of fire and jacinth. So now, when you see a nuclear missile in the sky, or being launched off even, all right, what is it? Fire and jacinth. Now jacinth, when you look into the word jacinth, all right, what is that? It's like an orangey, what's the definition? It says a reddish orangey gem variety of zircon. All right, so what's reddish orangey, man? When you go back into, let's go back into, look, does not look reddish orangey. All right, and then when you see it in the sky, what? All right, it's carrying, all right, or it's so I can read it again. So it says, and thus I saw the horses in a vision, and them that sat on them having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions. Okay, because when you go look into the makeup of a nuclear missile, what happens? All right, it breaks off into where you only have the head. All right, and the head does the most damage, man. When it gets to a certain point in the atmosphere, all right, the nuclear missiles within the head breaks off, all right, and when they touch down, they bring what? Fire and brimstone. Okay, even when you look up you have certain nuclear weapons, all right, that which when you go here, this is a nuclear weapon, also called an atom bomb, a nuke. It's like an atom bomb, a nuke, an atomic bomb, nuclear warhead. You know, so it just says it, man. Another name for a nuclear weapon is a nuclear warhead, because in the head of the nuclear missile is where the power lies, man. Just like a lion. All right. Whereas the heads of lions and the heads of the horses, whereas the heads of lions. All right. So that should tell you right there, you cannot take this literally, man, because a horse and a lion are two different animals. All right. But it's just showing you that it has power. All right. To where, like, when you hear a bunch of horses running, all right, the ground shakes under you, man. All right. And that's just like when the nuclear missiles come across the earth, man. There's going to be so many of them, like the scriptures say, that the earth is going to reel to and fro like a drunkard. All right. And it says, whereas the heads of lions, all right, because when a lion attacks, all right, where's his strength? His strength is in his teeth, all right, in his mouth. And out of their mouths issue fire and smoke and brimstone, you know. And when you see a lion and you open up his mouth, hey, you don't want to be around him. You don't want to be around him because you know it means trouble. By these three was the third part of men killed by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. All right, because guess what? The tails, all right, that's where the you know, allows them to basically get to where they need to go. All right. So it says, for the powers in their mouth and in their tails, you know. So the tail allows them to get to where they need to go. You know, gives them that, you know, is where the fuel and everything is for them to launch off. All right, and in their mouth, because when it gets to where it needs to go, and then now the mouth does all the work. You know, the warheads. For their tails were like unto serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And yes, they will hurt, man. You know, when you watch these post-apocalyptic movies, you know, nuclear fallout, or it's called like a nuclear winter. All right. Hey, it has devastating effects, man. You know, swells up your brain. You know, it swells up your insides, and you just get sick and die. And that's if you're not around the you know, they call it the fallout you know, area. You know, basically around to where it hit. You know, but if you just around where it hits, hey, you're gonna be disintegrated, like it says in Zechariah 14:12. Okay, so this is a very, very scary time, man. All right, for 2/3 that is. All right, so now when you read this article, you know, you can read it with fear, man. So it says nuclear war risk highest since World War II. UN Arms Research Chief warns. It says a top security expert at the United Nations has warned that the risk of nuclear weapons could be used is at its highest since World War II, calling it an urgent issue that the world should take more seriously. Okay? And that's why we're pushing harder, man. Because we are taking it seriously. Like it says in what's that? First Thessalonians 5:1. It says, but of the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Okay? So if you're not taking it seriously, you're in that mindset of peace and safety. And that's when, you're gonna hear the sirens in the skies and hey man, all of a sudden, nuclear destruction, man. You know? Or when they show safe peace and safety, like we just went into, even just going into nuclear war, man, it's gonna be great deaths and pestilences and plagues. Like the scriptures say in 2nd Ezra 15-16, man. It says, speaking to reporters in the Swiss city of Geneva on Tuesday, Renata Duane, director of the UN Institute for Disarmament Research, said the arms control landscape was changing, partly due to strategic competition between the United States and China, and noted that all states with nuclear weapons had nuclear modernization programs underway. We just read that in Joel the third chapter. You know, showing you that we are on the way to the third's woe. All right. Traditional arms control arrangements were also being eroded by the emergence of new types of war, with an increasing prevalence of armed groups and private sector forces and new technologies that blurred the line between offense and defense. So really, at any given second, basically, you know, for any given reason, all right, like Trump is already pulling excuses out of his ass to where he feels like it's okay for him to pull out of these different nuclear treaties. Okay, now basically the blame game, man. But hey, talking is gonna be it's not gonna be no more talking after a while, man. These other nations are gonna get pissed off, all right, and it's gonna be a ball game. It's just with this armament talks at a stalemate for the past 2 decades, 122 countries have signed a treaty to ban nuclear weapons, partly out of frustration and partly out of recognition of the risk, she said. I think that it's genuinely a call to recognize, and this has been somewhat missing in the media coverage of the issues, that the risk of nuclear war are particularly high now. All right, and goes into Revelations 12, where it says Esau knoweth that he have but a short time, man. Therefore he come down with great wrath, knowing that you have but a short time. Okay? For some of the factors I pointed out are higher now than at any time since World War II. The nuclear ban treaty, officially called the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, was backed by the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. The treaty has so far gathered 23 of the 50 ratifications that it needs to come into force, including from South Africa, Austria, Thailand, Vietnam, and Mexico. It is strongly opposed by the US and Russia and other states with nuclear arms, because those with nuclear arms understand that they need those nuclear arms, man. Cuba also ratified the treaty in 2018, 56 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis, a 13-day Cold War face-off between Moscow and Washington that marked the closest war the world had ever seen to come to nuclear war. The Wayne said the world should not ignore the danger of nuclear weapons. How we think about that and how we act on that risk and the management of that risk seems to me a pretty significant and urgent question that isn't reflected fully in the UN Security Council, she said. And that's the Lord, man. The Lord is pulling all the pieces together, man. But nobody's necessarily seeing it. You have certain people like, certain experts that's actually watching. But for the most part, most of the civilians of these certain places are asleep, man. Are asleep. So, hey, man, just want to get into this quick article. Nuclear war is about it. Hey, man, it's close, man. Esau has what's known as a doomsday clock, man. To where he's watching it, he's looking, to how much time he has to push the chip, how much time he has to, come down upon those that fear the Lord. How much time he has in general, man. you know. Hey, so with that, shalom to the elect.